My guest today is Harry Boxer. We're talking about the gaps in the morning and how to trade those. Harry, you've got some specific ways you like to trade gaps. Talk about that.
Well, first of all, pre-market prep is important. I believe in looking at pre-market news to see how it may relate to or affect the opening and price. And often when I look at the news service, it'll say so-and-so's gapping up 10, 20%, whatever the percent is, based on this news. So I'll put on my hot list and I'll watch that, because what we want to do is see what not just the opening minute or so is, but the first 15 to 20 minutes is where I believe the key patterns develop. Wedges, flags, or whatever, but the consolidation pattern. If a stock is gapping and not crapping, so to speak, and it's consolidating on lower volume, it's maybe setting up for another move, we often find that that's just the first and second waves in a 5-wave move, and we can capture the rest of the day and stick with it provided it doesn't break any support.
Are these typically day trades then that you're closing out before the market's end?
That's correct.
And you said about lower volume, but
right.
Consolidation, as long
right.
as the price isn't going. So lower volume accompanied by just kind of a steady
well,
price.
it could be a drift, because a drift could be slightly with a down angle, even an up angle. But oftentimes it forms a pennant or a wedge. Usually the wedge, it comes to an apex, it gets very quiet at that apex, and all of a sudden the volume comes in. That's usually where we buy it.
And there are sometimes that the market environment is such that something will gap up and pretty much just stay there for the rest of the day.
We see that a lot, but usually what happens is they gap up and they go a little higher, and then they'll pull back and wedge or coil all day. Now, oftentimes that's a nice setup for the next day or two. What we see is that could be a good swing trade. But even that little gap, first little tiny pullback sometimes, and then a further move up, that right there, you could get yourself a nice 3 to 5% scalp. And then it'll go into a coil. So you have to, basically make up your mind as, am I going to take a small little scalp on it, or am I going to try to ride it? If you ride it, you have to ride it with a stop. So it may run up to that level and then pull down and stop you out, and then drift the rest of the day. And sometimes after they drift 3 or 4 hours, they break out again and run again.
Now you talked about a swing trade. Is it something where if it does consolidate for the rest of the day at that same level, you might buy before the close for the next day?
No, I usually wait till the next day to see if it's going to start to thrust again, break up. Sometimes they gap down the next day. So I want to make sure that the trend is in play. In other words, it gapped up, it consolidated, it's gapping again. Oftentimes the second gap indicates that's going to move for the next few days.
Do you ever watch the futures to see what the futures is pre-market, to see, anticipate where they may be?
Yes, but I find that when we're in the right stocks, whether they're up or down, it doesn't matter what the market's doing. If I'm in the top 10 or 20 stocks that are moving up percentage-wise with volume, if the market could be down 200 points, those stocks continue to trade all day. Traders stay in those stocks because they know that's where the money is on the long side that day.
And how about the news itself? Does it matter what kind of news it is, earnings versus something else?
Well, yeah, and the thing is, if a stock gaps up because their earnings were beat by a penny, I'm not impressed. But if a stock was supposed to do 20 cents a share and it came out at 35 or 40, and the stock's going to gap 4 or 5 points, it usually means that Wall Street's impressed, and they're going to try to buy that stock that day. And so, and the same thing with FDA news. If it's a biotech approval, is it phase 1, 2, or 3? I mean, did they have a good news on a first phase 1 drug, or is it phase 3 or an FDA approval? And also, is the pre-market volume 5 million shares and it's going to gap 50%? Then I know that stock could probably run 100 or 200% that day.
Harry, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
You're watching the MoneyShow.com video network.